Maria stood at the edge of the crowded Los Angeles airport, clutching her small suitcase tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. The air was thick with the sounds of a bustling city, a stark contrast to the quiet streets of her hometown in Mexico. The palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, the bright California sun almost blinding her as it reflected off the glass buildings around her. Her family had arrived just the day before, and everything felt surreal. It was the promise of something better, something brighter than what they had left behind. They had crossed the border with nothing but hope and a dream, the American dream that so many had spoken of, and yet nothing could prepare her for the reality that lay ahead. Her father, a quiet and hard-working man, stood beside her, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. Her mother was clutching Maria's younger brother's hand, her face lined with both excitement and fear. They didn't speak much, but Maria could feel the weight of their unspoken words, the longing for a better life, for the future they'd always hoped to give her. "I'm going to make it," Maria whispered to herself, more for reassurance than belief. She had no qualifications, no skills beyond the traditional knowledge she had inherited from her mother, cooking, cleaning, helping around the house. But she had ambition. She had the same dream as everyone else who had come here, to rise above, to build something that would last. Looking at the skyline ahead, Maria breathed deeply, her chest swelling with the weight of the city's promise. In that moment, she didn't feel lost. She felt determined. Tomorrow would be her first day of work, and she was ready to face whatever came her way. But for now, she allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. Her future had just begun. Days turned into weeks, and reality hit Maria like a cold wave. The dreams that once seemed so bright now felt out of reach. She found work quickly, small, menial jobs that no one else seemed to want. It wasn't glamorous. In fact, it was exhausting. She worked in a factory, assembling products she couldn't name, for wages so low that they barely covered the rent for the tiny apartment she shared with her family. The hours were long, and the air was thick with the smell of metal and sweat. Her hands ached at the end of every shift, but there was no choice. They needed the money. Maria's English was broken and imperfect, and though she tried, her words didn't come out the way she intended. She fumbled through conversations with coworkers, often relying on gestures and the little Spanish words they understood. She felt embarrassed. People looked at her like she was different, like she didn't belong. At times, her sense of isolation seemed almost suffocating. There were moments when she wanted to give up. The struggle felt like it would never end, like she was caught in a loop of hard work with no way out. Yet every time she thought about her parents, the sacrifices they had made to get her here, she pressed on. For them. For her dreams. Every evening, after her grueling shifts, Maria would sit at the small kitchen table with her mother, helping her prepare a simple meal for the family. Her hands moved quickly, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, her mind wandering to the future, imagining a life where they wouldn't have to struggle anymore. But even as she worked, she couldn't shake the heavy feeling that something was missing. She was working hard, yes, but something needed to change. One late afternoon, Maria walked home from work, exhausted as usual, when a thought struck her. Why not do something different? She had seen other vendors around the city, pushing carts with tacos, tamales, and other delicious smells wafting through the air. She had seen the look of satisfaction on people's faces as they devoured the food on the go. What if she could do the same? The next morning, before the sun rose, Maria woke early and went to the market. She bought the freshest ingredients she could find, tender cuts of meat, cilantro, limes, and tortillas. Her mother's hands had taught her how to make the perfect taco, each one filled with love, seasoned just right. As she prepared the food, the smell took her back to her childhood in Mexico, to the streets lined with taco stands, to the warmth of her family's kitchen. She set up a small cart, using a foldable table she had borrowed from her neighbor. Her heart pounded with both excitement and nerves as she stood in front of the corner store, shouting in her broken English, "Tacos! Tacos! Delicious tacos!" She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but no one paid attention. The street was busy, people rushing past without a second glance. But Maria didn't give up. She kept calling out, repeating the words, letting the scent of her tacos speak for her. And then, slowly, someone stopped. A woman looked at the cart, smelled the savory aroma, and pulled out $1. "I'll try one," she said. The taco was everything Maria had hoped it would be: crispy, flavorful, simple, and filled with love. The woman smiled after her first bite, nodding in approval. "Delicious," she said, and within minutes, others started to gather around. The cart was a hit. As the days passed, more and more customers returned to Maria's corner. At first, it was the same regulars, people who liked the comfort of something familiar, who appreciated the warmth of her friendly demeanor. Maria became adept at making the tacos faster, perfecting the seasoning with each passing day. Her English remained halting, but she began to recognize some faces, learn their names, and understand their needs. She wasn't just selling tacos anymore, she was offering a taste of home, something that resonated deeply with her customers. But building trust wasn't easy. For every regular there were doubters. Maria wasn't just a vendor, she was a young, immigrant woman in a city full of strangers. Some people dismissed her cart without even trying her food. Others mocked her accent when she shouted her sales pitch. She'd stand there, trying to explain the flavors of her tacos, feeling the sting of judgment, yet never letting it stop her. One day, a man came by who had been watching her for a while. He didn't buy anything, just leaned against the wall and observed. Maria was used to the silent gazes by now, but something about this man made her nervous. He wore a business suit and had the kind of serious expression that meant he wasn't easily impressed. Finally, after several minutes, he approached. "Are these really as good as you say?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Maria nodded. "I promise. They're made with love, like my mom makes." He raised an eyebrow but smiled. "All right, I'll take one." He bit into the taco, chewing slowly. His eyes lit up. "Okay, you've got something here," he said, handing her a $5 bill. The man returned the next day and the day after that. Word of mouth spread, and soon, people came from all over the neighborhood to try her tacos. Maria didn't just feed them food, she fed them a piece of her culture. It was a small start, but Maria felt the weight of her success in the simple act of someone returning for more. Slowly, the trust began to build, not just in her food, but in her ability to make something out of nothing. And for the first time, Maria felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Maria's taco cart began to grow more popular with each passing day. The small corner where she set up each morning was now a steady stream of customers, young and old, eager to taste the authentic flavors she brought from Mexico. It was a simple operation, just her, the cart, and the food, but for Maria, it was everything. The heat of the grill, the clatter of the metal spatula, the rhythm of assembling tacos, it was all part of her dream taking shape. As the weeks went by, Maria noticed the change. The line at her cart grew longer, the people more varied, families on their lunch break, office workers in suits, students from the nearby high school. Her tacos were an affordable treat, a break from the ordinary. She'd greet each customer with a smile, offering them a few words of broken English, and they responded with warmth, patience, and smiles of their own. With the money she earned, Maria started saving every penny. She was cautious, always aware of how quickly things could go wrong. She didn't want to rush, but there was a growing feeling inside her that she could take the next step. So, after a few months of hard work, she took a leap. She found a small, affordable storefront in a quieter part of town. It wasn't much, just a small building with a few tables and a modest kitchen. But it was hers. The grand opening wasn't glamorous, but it didn't matter. She was there, cooking and serving with pride, watching the same faces from her taco cart walk through the door, bringing new customers along. The restaurant was small, but the tacos were just as delicious, just as comforting. The food spoke for itself, and word of mouth spread. Every day, the place filled with the sound of chatter and the sizzling of meat on the grill. For the first time, Maria felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Business wasn't always smooth sailing. The new restaurant, though successful, came with its own set of challenges. The rent was higher, The overheads increased, and there were moments when Maria thought she had made a mistake. It was a constant balancing act, keeping the restaurant running, paying her employees, and maintaining the quality of the food. Some days, it felt like there were too many things out of her control, like the world was pushing back against her success. One month, her expenses exceeded her earnings. There was a surge of new customers, yes, but the bills had piled up faster than she expected. The suppliers raised their prices, and the slow days in the middle of the week made it harder to keep the momentum going. Maria sat in the back office, the walls feeling smaller around her, the weight of the bills in her hands making her chest tighten. She called her parents that evening, trying not to let her worry show. Her father reassured her, as he always did, with quiet strength. "Don't let one bad month stop you, Mija," he said. "You've come this far. You'll figure it out." The next day, Maria woke up with a heavy heart but a clearer mind. She knew what she needed to do. She cut costs wherever possible, switching suppliers, adjusting her menu to include only the most popular dishes, and even working longer hours herself. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, whether it was preparing the food herself or washing dishes at the end of a busy night. Every penny counted, and she wasn't about to let this setback stop her. Slowly, things started to improve. Maria's persistence paid off. The restaurant weathered the storm, and while the experience was tough, it taught her lessons she would never forget. She learned to trust in her instincts, to be resourceful, and to never, ever give up. By the time Maria had stabilized the restaurant, she had begun to feel something she hadn't in a long time: confidence. She wasn't just running a small restaurant anymore. She was running a business. Maria started to think bigger, imagining what her little taco shop could become. Her love for cooking, for the food of her culture, drove her forward. Her reputation continued to grow, and soon enough, people were coming from all over Los Angeles to try her tacos. She expanded her menu, offering a range of authentic Mexican dishes, each made with the same care and attention to detail she had put into her tacos. From tamales to carne asada, every plate that left the kitchen was a reflection of Maria's heritage, her pride in her roots, and her passion for sharing her culture with the world. But Maria didn't stop at one restaurant. She realized that the demand for her food wasn't just local, it was spreading. She started thinking about how she could grow her business and expand beyond just one location. With the help of a few trusted advisors, Maria secured a loan to open a second restaurant. The new location was bigger, with more seating, and it was a hit from the start. Before long, she was opening more restaurants across the city. Her brand grew, and she became known not just for the food, but for the story of her rise. People admired her drive, her perseverance, and her commitment to staying true to her roots. Maria's taco empire was born, and it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Awards came in. Local newspapers ran stories about her success, about the young immigrant woman who had turned a taco cart into a thriving culinary business. Her restaurants were featured on food blogs, and even TV shows began to take notice. Maria was no longer just a taco vendor. She was a symbol of the immigrant spirit, of the American dream realized through hard work and dedication. Yet, despite the growing recognition, Maria never lost sight of what truly mattered. The customers who came through her doors, the community she had built, and the love she poured into every dish, those were the things that made her success so meaningful. And as she looked out over the dining rooms of her bustling restaurants, Maria knew that this was only the beginning. It was a Thursday afternoon when Maria's life took another unexpected turn. A producer from a popular national cooking show called her restaurant, asking if she would be interested in appearing on the show. Maria's heart skipped a beat as she listened to the offer. It wasn't just a cooking segment, it was an opportunity to share her story with millions of viewers. Maria hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. This was her chance to take her dream even further. She spent the next few weeks preparing, perfecting her dishes, and rehearsing how to tell her story. When the day finally arrived, Maria stood in front of the cameras, a little nervous but also filled with pride. The lights were bright, the crew buzzing with energy, but all Maria could focus on was the food and the message she wanted to convey, This was a journey that wasn't just about tacos, but about family, culture, and resilience. On the show, she demonstrated how to make her signature tacos, simple yet bursting with flavor. She spoke in front of the cameras about her immigrant experience, about the sacrifices her family made, and how food had always been a way for her to stay connected to her roots. The hosts were moved by her story, and the viewers were captivated by her passion and authenticity. The response was immediate. Within hours of the show airing, her restaurants were flooded with customers, many eager to try the tacos they had seen on TV. Maria's story became a symbol of perseverance for millions of people who saw her as a reminder that the American dream was still alive. The spotlight was overwhelming at first, but Maria handled it with grace, staying humble and grounded in the values that had guided her from the start. She continued to cook in her restaurants, still making every taco with the same love and dedication as she had when she first started. Months passed, and Maria's empire continued to expand. Her restaurants were now scattered across the country, and she had become a household name. Yet, on a quiet evening, Maria found herself sitting alone in the small restaurant where it all began. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the familiar sounds of sizzling meat and laughter from the dining area wash over her. She could almost hear the echoes of her younger self, pushing her taco cart, calling out in broken English, hoping for a taste of success. Her mind drifted back to those first days, the long hours spent working multiple jobs, the fear and uncertainty that came with every new step. She thought of her parents, their unwavering belief in her, and the sacrifices they had made to get her here. She remembered the first tacos she ever sold, the woman who smiled and said it was the best she had ever tasted. That moment had set everything in motion, and now, as she looked around at her thriving business, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude. She thought of the people who had supported her along the way, her loyal employees, her customers who had become friends, and the mentors who had offered advice when she needed it most. They had all played a part in her success, and Maria knew she couldn't have done it alone. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a message from her mother. "We're so proud of you, Mija. You've made it." Maria smiled, her heart full. With a deep breath, she stood up from the table, looking around the small restaurant that had once seemed so uncertain, but now felt like home. The journey wasn't over. There was still more to do, more people to reach, and more dreams to fulfill. But for now, she was content. She had come so far, and she had built something that mattered. Years later, Maria sat at the counter of her flagship restaurant, watching a young woman in the kitchen preparing tacos just as she had done so many times before. The young woman's hands moved with the same care and attention to detail that Maria had once put into her work. Maria could see the spark of determination in her eyes, the same one that had been in her own when she first started. Maria smiled as she stood up and walked over to the kitchen. The young woman looked up, startled. "Everything good?" Maria asked, her voice warm with encouragement. The young woman nodded, wiping her brow. "Yes, Chef Maria. The tacos are ready." Maria nodded approvingly. "I see you're taking care of them. Keep it up. You've got this." As Maria turned to walk away, she paused for a moment, looking around the restaurant, now a bustling hub of activity, with customers enjoying their meals, sharing stories, and laughing. The aroma of tacos filled the air, and the sounds of conversations blended with the music playing softly in the background. It was everything Maria had ever dreamed of. She stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the evening air. The street was alive with energy, the lights of the city sparkling in the distance. She thought about her journey, how it had started with nothing but a dream, and how it had grown into something far bigger than she had ever imagined. The path had been long, filled with challenges and setbacks, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph and joy. Looking up at the sky, Maria smiled. She had done it. She had built something lasting, something that would carry her legacy for generations to come. And as she walked down the familiar street, she knew she had truly made it, not just as a businesswoman, but as a testament to the power of hard work, resilience, and the American dream. The story of Maria, The immigrant girl who started with nothing and built a culinary empire was far from over. It was only just beginning.